Good afternoon. It's 1:30. We're on May 19th. We're in the Tom Baker Room of the City County Building. This is the Bismarck-Mandan Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board meeting. Before we get started, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll call the meeting to order. If we can call roll, please.
Mayor Berglund. Mayor Freilich.
Here.
Commissioner Tokash.
Here.
And Commissioner Bakken.
Here.
And Chair Schmitz.
Here. That's okay. I was going to answer anyway, but. All right, we're at public comment. Public comment is restricted to the current agenda or an item on the prior agenda, excluding any public hearings. Anyone wish to speak, please come forward or make yourself known. A second call for public comment. A third and final call for public comment. Hearing no one and seeing no one, the public comment period is now closed. Members, what are your wishes with regard to the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Freilich.
Yes.
Commissioner Tokash.
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
And Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Moving to the regular agenda, item 8, the Bismarck functional class change request. And there's an action item related to that. Stephen, I'll let you present, but I believe it's a request to withdraw it now.
Correct. So, yes, just very briefly, this is a holdover from, or a carryover from April's meeting. The city of Bismarck recently completed an extension of East Century Avenue and 52nd Street, and they had approached us to request those roadways be functionally classified. However, after a meeting between the MPO, City of Bismarck, and Burleigh County staff, in late April, the city has decided to withdraw the request at this time. 52nd Street is currently a township road designated as a local road, and both city and county staff believe the complexities of securing federal funding in this area would outweigh the potential benefits, again, at this time. So they are indeed requesting to withdraw the request, and TAC recommended approval of their request.
Are there any questions? What are your wishes, members?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Freilich.
Yes.
Commissioner Tokash.
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken.
Yes.
And Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Moving to item 9, the 2026 curb management study. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. So yes, the MPO is bringing forward a curb management study request for proposals for the city of Bismarck. This was formerly referenced or referred to as the parking needs study, but City of Bismarck staff and the MPO have retitled the study. And so, yeah, going forward, it is curb management. The study is in the current approved work program for the MPO. It has a not-to-exceed budget of $150,000, with the City of Bismarck providing the 20% local match for the project. The study goal is to provide recommendations to the city for the efficient and responsible use of its urban curb space. The curb space, for purposes of the study, is defined as the area adjacent to the curbs that is utilized for purposes such as bus stops, bike lanes, commercial delivery zones, dining, pickup zones, parking, and more. The study area will focus on downtown Bismarck, but the consultant will also be requested to assist the MPO and the city to look at additional high-activity areas within Bismarck city limits to see if there are any additional areas that should be studied along with the downtown. So the study will inventory available curb space within the study area, evaluate potential uses for the space, look at demand management of curb space, and provide various key recommendations. Parking policies, the recent update to the Bismarck Land Development Code, and the adequacy of existing parking signage and regulations will be studied. The public involvement section of the RFP calls for 2 public engagement opportunities with the Bismarck general public and encourages creativity in gathering input as the study progresses. Ultimately, the study will provide a creative, prioritized, multimodal range of alternatives for curb space management within the study area that will assist the city of Bismarck with its planning as the community continues to grow. So the idea would be, assuming board approval of the study, the RFP will be released later this week. There will be deadline of June 12th for proposals to be submitted, interviews and a hopeful approval of the consultant in July, kickoff of the study in August or mid-August, and we are targeting an end date of June 30th of 2027 for the study. TAC recommended approval of the RFP as presented, and I can stand for any questions that board members may have on this.
Any questions? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Stephen, why is part of the Kirkwood Mall parking lot included in this study?
It's a little hard. I apologize. It is a little hard to read, but the blue line is intended to be the study area. I suppose it really should probably go up a little bit there, but Kirkwood Mall as such is not intended to be included. But it's kind of Kirkwood Mall is the limit, the terminus of the downtown area.
So
Where
that's,
Indiana goes across, that included part of Kirkwood Mall, so that's what.
Yeah, I may have to tweak
Okay.
the lines a little bit. I appreciate you calling that out.
any other questions? And you did state the city of Bismarck's picking up the local share, so
That is
none of
correct.
the other.
This is correct. It is a
jurisdictions-
Bismarck only study. Yep.
What are your wishes, policy board members?
Motion to approve.
Second, I guess.
We have a first and a second.
It's all Bismarck, so.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Tokash,
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken,
Yes.
and Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Moving to item 10, the 2026-2027 UPWP amendment. Go ahead,
Thank you
Kim.
very much, Chair Schmitz and members of the board. Amendment number 2 to the 2026-2027 UPWP or Unified Program Unified Planning Work Program provides updates made necessary by an increased amount in the authorized FTA 2026 funding over what was previously estimated. So this is shown in your packet beginning on page 35, Exhibit RF, as a track changes version of the document. I haven't shared on this for a long time. Thank you for your patience. Just trying to share some screen here for you. So this FTA increase was a total increase of $1,031.91, and it resulted to changes in the total budget. It resulted in changes to the federal budget amount and then also to the local match. So we revised the document beginning with the 2026 MPO revenue table on page 5. There you go. And we do have the track changes in red indicating the adjustments to those amounts. This was probably the bigger part of the revision that's contained in this amendment, along with the revised 2026 budget table, which shows those increases again to the total federal and local budgets, along with the increase that's being applied to the office operations line item. Now, the City of Bismarck provides the 20% match for the office operations line item, and The city had no objection at the time when I proposed the $258 increase applied to their local match in that regard. So what we would be looking for is an approval of the amendment number 2 to the UPWP. TAC did recommend approval of this amendment as presented yesterday, and I'd be happy to stand for questions. As a note, if the policy board does approve, it still is not final until Federal Highway Administration does approve as well. So,
Are there any questions of Kim? If not, what are your wishes, members?
Move to approve. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Tokash,
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken,
Yes.
and Chair Schmitz.
Yes, moving to item 11, Basics Act Letter of Support. Go ahead, Kim.
all right. Thank you very much, Chair Schmitz. We've been talking about this Basics Act for a little while now, probably a good couple of months, but just to provide a little background on this. The current federal transportation bill expires on September 30th of this year, and the very first substantial effort at a new piece of surface transportation reauthorization legislation was introduced into the House on February 9th of 2026. This was known as the Bridges and Safety Infrastructure for Community Success, or for short, the Basics Act. H.R. 7437 really, truly is a bipartisan effort with both Democrats and Republicans sponsoring and co-sponsoring the bill. The MPOs of the state of North Dakota have been afforded several opportunities to look this legislation over. We've brought forward some items to this board for consideration, and we've discussed this bill and potential support for it through the last couple of months. Now, it really is the consensus of the state MPO directors that any support that we might offer for provisions in the bill would likely be far more impactful if we provide those with one unified voice rather than individually, and that's what we kind of propose to this board. Well, the draft letter of support in the packet, beginning on page 71, was drafted for your review and included. It has since been refined to the version that you have in front of you as handouts, which really are not much different from the version in the packet, except for some typological edits and very, very minor language refinement as indicated by the highlights. So you'll see on the first page, there was a bit in that third paragraph. The language was changed a little bit just to provide a bit of softening over what was originally included. And then there were a couple of words throughout the document, but nothing that changed any intent thereof. So as a note, we are the first MPO to review this draft letter, even though all the executive directors have weighed in on it. You are the first policy board to see this, and it will be presented to the policy boards of the other 3 state MPOs for their consideration as well. So should all 4 state MPO policy boards give us their stamp of approval on this draft letter, then the letters would be drafted to Congresswoman Fedorchak and to our Senators Kramer and Hoeven and be routed back through the policy boards for the chairman's signatures for each respective policy board. Yesterday, TAC did recommend approval of this draft letter as it was presented with the changes in front of you, and we would be asking the same.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Tokash,
Yes.
Commissioner Bakken,
Yes.
and Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Item 12, the 2026 Fringe Area Roadmap Master Plan update. Is Joel online?
I am online. Good afternoon, Chair Schmitz and board members. I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation here to give you an update on the Fringe Area Roads Plan. one second here as we get set up. Overall, the major progress that we've made lately is on refining what we've been calling in the past a regionally significant corridor network. We've kind of changed that term. But the idea of that, and you'll hear me speak to this a few times in this presentation, is that in its prior iterations, the Fringe Area Roads Master Plan was really just a development framework blueprint that defined road connections that development should make when it happens. And there was no timing associated with that, and really not a lot of review for the MPO itself. But we have moved toward a system where there is a network, a very selected network of what we're calling regionally important or major regional corridors that would continue to be locally owned and managed like they are today. But they, when looked at in the aggregate in a regional scale, they have more significance and more importance for long-term build-out of the transportation network. So we've said that that should be a place where the MPO has some additional role to just review and make sure that development impacts on those corridors are not creating any conditions where we're precluding the potential regional function. So we're working on what exactly that means. We had a discussion with our project steering committee this morning to start talking about some of the details of how this intersects with local development review processes. And we're working toward having a draft of the full plan to share with staff at the end of this month and to start, refining that to get that ready for presentation to all of you and to the councils and commissions of the local governments into the summer. So just as a reminder here, the overall major corridors network is something that we've talked about. It's really limited to these critical links that do things like introduce bridges or provide major connections across both counties and provide kind of almost like a state highway level function, even if they are not all classified as state highways. And the prior north-south beltway concepts that were studied almost 20 years ago now have been kind of kept as a part of this system. We're not proposing to keep using that term beltway in the same way because it doesn't really function like that. That initial concept had a southern bridge crossing that has really fallen out of public discussion and hasn't been included in the last Fringe Area Roads Plan. But we are looking at a northern bridge as a possibility still. So many of those same ideas and purposes of that system are retained in that regional corridor network. And what we would propose is that most of the network that's been shown in the plan map stays kind of like it was under the Fringe Area Roads Plan before. These are just key connections to make when development happens, and exceptions to what's shown on the map are allowed as long as you're meeting the overall intent and spirit of it. But when we get into that major regional corridors network, we would introduce a couple of steps that don't take place now. And I want to draw your attention to steps 4 and 5 of this diagram here, where after getting through kind of a typical development review process, principally from subdivision applications, but maybe it's major site plans too that have a lot of really complex access to multiple corridors, we would take this to the MPO, and the Technical Advisory Committee and MPO staff would work together just to track what this development is doing along these major corridors. These have all been identified because they have some critical purpose in the network. What you're looking at here on this map is the long-range traffic forecast from the regional forecasting model that the MPO uses, and what would be happening with traffic throughout the region in the year 2050. So many of the corridors that are shown in yellow here as part of the network are carrying higher traffic volumes. They're going to be critical links, and the plan is saying that these need to be preserved and given attention, not just 25 years into the future, but even developments that happen today. We need to be looking at the overall cumulative impact on these corridors and making sure that if it's time to start thinking about enhancing that road or doing something to preserve its function as development grows, that we are doing that in a timely way. So this is setting up a way for the Fringe Area Roads Plan to communicate with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan of the MPO. And if you see that a corridor is really starting to grow and add a lot of traffic, that you're able to use that in the discussions of the MTP updates to make sure that you're able to program funds to address those corridors when they're needed, and not just look at some abstract, 2050 kind of horizon and figure that it's going to happen at some point between now and then. And just as an example, this is one of a series of kind of selected analyses we did on key links and key corridors within the network, just to see what's the traffic at a certain point forecast to be. And the Northern Bridge concept, that would be 57th Avenue on the Burleigh County side and 38th Street on the Morton County side leading up to that bridge. That's forecast to carry traffic that could justify, a 4-lane road. So that's an example of how we want to use this to start understanding the long-term vision, but the sort of short and interim term path to get to that vision as development happens, and to be planning for it and ready to respond accordingly. So with this taking shape as kind of two networks here, the major regional corridors network is one where the plan would do things like go ahead and set some requirements, or at least some strong guidance for right-of-way dedication for what would be needed there, setting some guidance around where access is proposed, so that development isn't just coming in and saying, well, we can do this wherever we need, and not be thinking about the transportation function. You're taking more of a look at these serving a regional purpose and kind of tailoring your development expectations accordingly. And that would be for things like rail crossings and bridges as well. Anywhere that these corridors are interacting with either a major barrier or other connections in the network. But the rest of the fringe area network, which is that greatly filled out network along the section lines and with internal streets connecting within, that's really going to stay functioning much as it does today. It's mostly the purview of the local governments and their development review process to make sure that these connections are happening. And if they can't happen, or they need to have some substantial change from what the plan called for, the local governments are documenting that and helping the MPO to understand this is where we needed to make a change to this, just so everybody's on the same level of understanding in terms of data and information. So the plan would set those things up in advance. They'd be defined here. So there wouldn't really be questions about that from one jurisdiction to the next. But what we're proposing as part of this two-tier system or two-network system is a couple of procedure changes as well. Today, what happens for any of these roads that are suggested for this regional network, today what happens is, just like on the rest of the network, you have the development review process taking a look at the impacts of development on the road network. But what we're proposing is that the MPO would work a little more proactively with the local governments to track these things. I think everybody understands the impacts kind of at a broad level, but doing a bit more kind of logging of that, or just understanding, hey, we're starting to add traffic along this corridor, we're getting close to current capacity. Maybe in the next MTP update, we need to set some policies that prioritize this corridor to be able to get programmed in the near term for some federal funding assistance or some way to move the project forward. But that would lead to the TAC making any recommendations if there were changes on that network as well. So while you're tracking the impacts as development grows over time, you're also flagging any developments that propose some significant change, like that 57th Avenue corridor, for instance. If a developer wanted to redirect 57th Avenue into a development, you wouldn't have a direct connection to the bridge anymore. That's pretty substantial. And from the regional standpoint, you want to think about how that works, and the MPO is in a place to be able to consider that input from all of the member jurisdictions, work with staff, and work with the technical advisory committee to come up with a recommendation of the right way to handle this. And we're proposing that we would, hand that to the policy board for a formal approval prior to that development getting approved by the local government. I'll just reiterate here, we've brought this up a few times in the past, but this is a change from what happens today. That's not how the process tends to work. So we want to make sure that if this is put into place as part of the review system, that we're using it judiciously, and sparingly enough. We're not saying this would need to happen with every development coming in wanting to move its driveway 50 feet, but we are saying that if some major change to that regional network is proposed, and it would fundamentally change how one of those corridors could work to serve the region, it would keep it from working as a bypass or keep it from connecting to a bridge. That's a place where the region, and the policy board being the kind of voice for transportation in the region, should get to speak up and say, we would like to see this continue to serve in that function, and it's going to make us more competitive for, bringing in resources to help build out our network if we're doing that. So this is your place to get to share that opinion. And overall, in terms of process, this shouldn't need to add more time. Development likes certainty. It likes, a kind of set expedited process. So we're not proposing that this would need to be, months and months and years of additional review. This might add another month just to go through TAC and policy board with the MPO. But in those rare cases, and we do believe they would be pretty rare, where this would need to happen, it does give some unified regional look at the transportation implications. For anything else, not on that regional network, things would move largely as they do today. And one detail that we're working with staff and the member jurisdictions to define is exactly how to go about documenting that. We have an amendment process with the fringe area plan now. It doesn't get uniformly used, or reported back to the MPO. So we want to try to come up with something streamlined and simple so that everyone can kind of do this. And we're talking about things like an annual sort of call for updates from the member jurisdictions on what they changed in a year so that all changes can be made at once. We want to keep it easy. So that shouldn't add more time either. That's really done after the development approval happens, but it's a way of keeping our information and data up to date. So as we are working toward a draft and look forward to sharing that with you in these next couple of meeting updates, we're working on defining more details about that regional network and how it functions, in addition to a focus on our hotspot focus areas that really kind of present unique challenges around how to make the transportation network fit together. But we are working toward a full plan draft. We'll be reviewing that with staff and our committees and North Dakota DOT, and we look forward to sharing that with all of you in this capacity as the policy board, as well as in your respective elected bodies later in the year, probably midsummer. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? Go ahead, Commissioner.
As far as the next steps on the public open house events, what is the process for getting that out, and just so the public knows where and when those are?
Well, we have public open house events scheduled for this week. Those have gotten advertised, and Stephen, feel free to jump in and add to this through kind of typical City of Bismarck communication channels, as well as through the newspaper.
Yeah, and we've reached out to all of our jurisdictions, and they've all shared on websites and social media, including the counties and the cities. So the first meeting will be tomorrow, City of Bismarck Public Works, from 5:30 to 7:30, and then we'll have one in Mandan Thursday night from 5 to 7 at the Morton Mandan Public Library.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Item 13, the 2028 Transportation Alternatives Update. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. So this is just an informational item for you. And North Dakota Department of Transportation recently announced grant awards for the fiscal year 28 Transportation Alternatives Program, which we solicited for late last year. Out of the 4 applications the MPO submitted, we did receive 1 project award, so that was funded. The Bismarck State Street Trail Rehab Project from Divide Avenue to Calgary Avenue is going to be receiving funding and will be shown in our Transportation Improvement Program going forward. The city has been pursuing funding for this project for the past several years, so we congratulate them on being able to move forward with that. Any questions? Thank you.
Item 14, passenger rail service update. Kim.
Thank you, Chair Schmitz, members of the board. I do have just a few items to update you on the passenger rail, the potential passenger rail service restoration in our region. The Bismarck-Mandan MPO, at the behest of the policy board, has convened a passenger rail roundtable discussion. We held that on April 28th. We extended invitations to community leaders and elected officials of communities along the BNSF rail line who would be primarily impacted by the return of passenger rail to our region. And those invites went out to folks in Beach, Medora, Dickinson, Mandan, Bismarck, Lincoln, Jamestown, and Valley City. Of course, busy schedules and relatively short notice, I guess, trying to wrap that up in a few weeks' time. Not everybody was able to attend, but we did have representatives from Dickinson, Mandan, Bismarck, Lincoln, and Jamestown. We shared some very good information at that roundtable. The basic purpose of the discussion was to, first of all, present the status of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority Corridor ID project in our area, where that is and how it's coming along. Also, to share information with one another on our individual local passenger rail readiness and what that situation looks like, and then to identify community needs, challenges, and opportunities throughout, to better explore collaboration opportunities. So trying to create strategies for advocacy and to advance our efforts in restoring passenger rail to our region. In the packet, I did attach notes from that particular meeting, and there was a desire that was expressed to have further meetings, although probably not on a real regular basis. We kind of pitched maybe quarterly, a couple of times a year. So we'll kind of see how things work out as far as efforts amongst our community and others, and see what the temperature is maybe a little bit later in the summer for something in the fall. Additionally, I did attend the Bismarck-Mandan Chamber EDC Local Issues Committee meeting last Tuesday. What I did was I provided a presentation to present the status of passenger rail service in the MPO area, but strictly from a transportation perspective, because that is the MPO's purview. Also, we were trying to seek Bisman Chamber EDC support for our passenger rail restoration efforts in the area. They were very receptive to the presentation, although I need to, I guess, provide a caveat that while we are primarily transportation focused, the Bismarck Chamber EDC is primarily driven by economic impacts. And so we were encouraged to have further conversations with the mayors of our local communities here regarding economic impacts, maybe gather some information to bring to those leaders and have further discussions, and then come back to the EDC with some further information. So we'll be reaching out in that regard, and there will be more to come in that regard. And then finally, we, as most of us know, the MPO had advertised for an RFP for a passenger rail station siting study. The RFP was approved through this board last month in April, and so we advertised. The deadline for proposals was Friday at 4 o'clock, and we did receive one responsive proposal. North Dakota DOT does recognize that for a qualifications-based selection process to occur, that we should have a minimum of 3 proposing firms to interview. And in cases where we do not achieve that 3-firm minimum, we basically ask permission to proceed or direction on how to proceed. So I did contact North Dakota DOT. I presented the situation. While we did have some interested parties prior to even the release of the RFP, we know that in the period of 3 to 6 months' time, availability of staff, workload, things like that change very quickly within these firms, and we ended up with one proposal. So I did receive notice today from North Dakota DOT that we are authorized to move forward with the interview of the responsive firm, and so I can release that name today. The responding firm was KLJ, and they have named subconsultants of the David Evans Group and also Hubel Designs. And so the interview will occur the week of June 8th through the 11th. And then we'll be on our way with our study. Is there any questions that I might stand for, or questions, concerns?
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman. Kim, I do have a question. I appreciate the summary you put together and the feedback from the roundtable. Was there any strong opposition from any of the participants on that?
Thank you very much for your question, Commissioner Tokash. And it is interesting because I think I and maybe a few others shared the opinion that there might have been some opposition in the West. Dickinson CVB has been on board with the return of passenger rail since about late 2019, early 2020. And they have supported that wholeheartedly, as has the Dickinson community. And very recently, with the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority Corridor ID project and the restoration of passenger rail, coinciding with the new presidential library opening in Medora, they've actually had Court Miller from the consulting firm who is charged with the public relations for the TR library talk about how excited they are to have rail return to Medora, and they're very excited about having a station right there. We thought, I think maybe the thinking was that this is perhaps taking away from Dickinson somehow, and that they may oppose that a bit. However, the Dickinson representative indicated that not only do they not oppose it, they are supportive of it. They feel that there can be a real collaborative effort there with shuttle service and transportation issues. Also, DSU, I wasn't aware of this, is the research arm for the Presidential Library, and so there's already that existing cooperative effort going on there, and they feel that they can just continue to build on that. So I felt that that was a very positive insight that was provided to us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Kim? Is there any other business?
Yes, and I'm not going to go too far from the podium this time. Just very briefly, I did mention a couple of months ago that the MPO does undergo a mid-year review. This is conducted by the North Dakota DOT along with an effort from our federal oversight agencies of Federal Highway and FTA, Federal Transit Administration, whereby we get together, they review our programs and our processes, make sure that we're tracking well and as would be expected. We discuss any items of concern or any emergent issues. And then hopefully we're good to go for a little while and continue with our programs. I did want to extend the invitation to any policy board members who may want to attend the mid-year review. We would be happy to open that up to your attendance. I could provide you information on the location if you want to do in person. However, it is a 4-hour time slot. We do have Teams options available if you would like to pop in and out as you're available. The mid-year review is scheduled for Thursday, June 4th, and I can certainly get you that information offline. All you do, just reach out to me or grab me after the meeting, let me know, and I can get everything off to you, make sure you're invited.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Members, do you have any other business? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you.